Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Right, welcome back, Wolfpack, for our weekly, not another Kyle Rittenhouse trial update from Behind Enemy Lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. As always, great show for you tonight. If those of you who are new to the not on Saturday weekly news recaps, a little bit of an odd show today. I know we picked up some new viewers in the last 2 weeks here with all of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial updates. So for those of you who were tuning in for that, this is actually a show that typically happens on Saturday. However, it is happening on Sunday today because yesterday I was busy. We do a weekly news recap where we go through several stories of interest throughout the week and basically dissect them and give commentary on them. But before we get into all that, we first have to thank our sponsors, and we got to thank all you guys for making the show possible. It's only possible because of viewers like you, unlike PBS, who is only possible because of taxpayers like you. We are only funded by viewers who voluntarily choose to give us money. We especially thank those of you who donate to us financially, which I do believe those of you who are attempting to donate to us financially, I believe the Streamlabs link is still broken. So we are working on fixing that. We would especially like to thank those of you who donate to us financially, including Kayla, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thunder Erikin, the White Lion, the White Wolf, the Timber Wolf, and I think we'll say the Dire Wolf too. All right, money is not the only way you can give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, YouTube, and Twitch, or wherever you happen to find us at. We especially like when you share links to our content, as we have no algorithm to do this for us. Alrighty, so our first little story today is a little bit of a funny, I guess, meme / political comic / Nancy Pelosi is an old fogey who doesn't really understand modern media, or a joke. And it's further proof that we are living in the weirdest timeline, because Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar posted a, quote, Attack on Titan themed, quote, attack ad that depicted him as defeating the mindless man-eating giants with the faces of AOC and other Democrat politicians on Twitter this past Sunday. The video was titled Attack on Immigrants, and I actually have a clip of that video here that we can watch. Let's see. Okay, so as is self-evident, the video is major cringe, difficult to watch. Not sure where he's going with this. But beyond the major cringe, Nancy Pelosi sees this as an actual threat on her life, which is pretty wild. And she has demanded that Rep. Gosar be investigated for crimes against the party. Pelosi wrote on Twitter, quote, "Threats of violence against members of Congress and the President of the United States must not be tolerated. GOP leaders should join in condemning this horrific video and call on ethics committee and law enforcement to investigate whether or not Paul Gorsar is in fact a Titan Slayer, and whether or not Nancy is herself a Titan. Which, I mean, certainly big government. I would say that there's some the analogy there, little on point. Basically, this amounts to what is essentially a political cartoon. Political cartoons are rather common forms of political speech that have been around really since the origin of the First Amendment, and beyond. And I mean, political cartoons have long established been protected by the First Amendment. And since this is just obviously a political cartoon, essentially, it really should be not Gosar who's being investigated by the House Ethics Committee. It should actually be Nancy who's being investigated, because she's attempting to have and abuse her powers of investigation, and is also essentially violating Gosar's constitutionally protected First Amendment right to free speech by suggesting that he needs to be investigated for a political cartoon. That is intimidation, and it is not allowed. Well, theoretically, it's not allowed in our current form of government. So I know Nancy doesn't like our current form of government, but that doesn't really matter. Alrighty, so we're gonna skip over this one. We'll probably get back to that next week. So our just kind of a minor update on something we'll probably cover next week is, as you guys heard last week, Biden issued his quote vaccine mandate, and basically everybody's gonna have to get the jab in the next 2 months, or I guess you're gonna be unpersoned. I don't know what happens to you. I guess you lose your job. I don't know. But either way, that has been basically put on pause, as essentially immediately the vaccine mandate was put on pause by the Fifth Circuit, who put I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it's essentially Biden wants to do something and the court said no, you can't do it. And so now we're back into a stalemate. I guess we'll see where that goes. Hopefully it goes somewhere. Alrighty. Next story we have is, let's see here. So I didn't know this, but have you guys heard about this? So apparently we have a U.S. embassy in, I guess, Iran it's in Yemen. Let's see here. Where apparently we have several American citizens being held hostage. Let's find out what we're talking about here. So, over the past few weeks, there's been a hostage crisis ongoing in Yemen that you've likely not heard of. 25 staff members of the U.S. Embassy in Yemen's largest city in Sana'a, I think it's Sana'a, have been rounded up and held hostage by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, a Houthi rebel group. There we go. The U.S. closed its embassy in, I guess, Yemen in 2015 after the Houthis took control of the city. Yemen has been engaged in a civil war, which in actuality has been a proxy war between Iran-supported Houthi rebels and U.S.-backed Yemenis government. These embassy staff members are Yemenis being so these embassy staff members that are being held hostage are Yemenis being employed by the U.S. government, and they're not U.S. citizens, actually. So the start of this article is maybe a little misleading. Since 2015, they have been tasked with, quote, working from home or providing security for the empty embassy building. Let's see here. So some perspective that is going to be different from what the Democrats and Republicans are saying about the crisis. The Democrats are basically saying nothing about what's going on here. And the one press release we have on the issue from the State Department is that they are negotiating the release of the embassy staff, and that some have been released already. The Biden administration will likely pay quite a large amount or make a concession to make this story go away. For the Republicans, namely Ted Cruz and Fox News, have made it sound like American citizens, hence my confusion at the beginning of the story. Republicans and Fox News have made it sound like American citizens are being held captive by Iran, and that Biden needs to authorize a commando raid to save them, because there is no there is no military conflict or foreign entanglement that Fox News and Ted Cruz will not get us into. They are treating this crisis as similar to the Afghan withdrawal, saying that Biden is leaving Americans behind. However, the moderate third way of looking at this, not that it's just not a problem at all and not that we need to go to war over it, is how about we not give the terrorists anything of value and pay the ransom? And we could also not risk American lives to extract the Yemenis people from their own civil war, just because we're paying them to maintain a building that, really, that we shouldn't really have to be paying them to maintain that building. They should just, be grateful and maintain it on their own. We shouldn't be maintaining a building like that in the middle of a conflict in a war zone for a civil war anyways. That doesn't make sense. And to, just because it didn't make sense to have a embassy being maintained in the middle of that war zone to start with doesn't mean that we should compound that error by sending in troops to, I guess, defend property. There's a lot of discussion this week about whether or not you're allowed to defend property with lethal force. So I think it would maybe not make sense to send the American military in to, I guess, defend property that we aren't really using. Alrighty, so let's see here. So you are likely asking yourself, why are we engaging in a proxy war in Yemen in the first place? I can't even point out Yemen on a map. Well, Yemen is the poorest Arab nation with basically no natural resources. The Yemenis people and the government do not have a favorable opinion of Americans or American culture, and we have no bases in Yemen and no economic or military entanglements with them. Yemen, however, is important to 8 other Sunni-controlled Arab nations, including their neighbor Saudi Arabia, who has more than enough money and military might to support or dismantle them if they would like. These are the nations that the U.S. is relying on to enforce the isolation of Iran. Even without our interest in isolating Iran, these 8 Arab nations already hate Iran due to the Sunni-Shia Muslim rivalry, which, I could attempt to explain that, but, nobody can really. If anybody could actually understand the issue between Sunni and Shia Muslims, then I think we'd have a much safer world. But we're certainly not going to figure that out on this show this weekend. Let's see here. So I have perhaps the unpopular opinion that we should just let these barbarian tribes that both hate us fight to the death and not really waste our money on picking sides or anything. If we've learned anything this year, you cannot buy for any amount of money the peace, democracy, or love of America from the Arab people. They have no interest. They don't want it. Even for $2 trillion, they don't want it. We learned that in Afghanistan. We should continue learning that elsewhere, or at least apply what we've learned elsewhere. Alrighty. So our next story is a fun one. Joe Biden is trying to, we used to have a president that was looking to make America great again. The American people and the Democrat printers decided to, that we didn't want to make America great anymore. But Joe Biden is, he's coming back. He likes that saying, so he's working on something new here. And Joe Biden is now trying to make segregated baseball leagues great again. As people become senile, or, as people enter their 10th year of being senile, as Joe Biden has, they become more honest. And sometimes they lose the filter and have a harder time hiding what it is that they truly believe. Joe Biden, the man who praised the virgin, which is funny because Joe Biden's, back when he did have a filter, it was pretty amazing the things that he let slide. Like, for instance, praising the virtue of his, quote, best friend, Robert Byrd, the KKK exalted Cyclops level 66 Grand Dragon Virgin Wizard, who continues to struggle with hiding his racism. Again, so many of the Democrats have just sang the praises of Klan members, like actual Klan members, and the Democrats just love them to death. So what exactly is it that Joe Biden said this week? Well, let's take a look here, because I have the clip, and by golly, is this a clip?
I just want to tell you, I know you're little younger than I am. But, I've adopted the attitude of the great Negro at the time.
The great what?
The Negro League went on to be.
Oh my God, he repeated it.
A great pitcher in the pros in the Major League Baseball after Jackie Robinson. His name was Satchel Paige.
Alrighty. Well, there you have it. Joe Biden. I'm sure that was him slipping back. When was the last time they had segregated baseball? When was that? 60 years ago? Right around the time Joe Biden was first entering Congress? Jesus Christ. Alrighty. So, obviously, Joe Biden is no stranger to saying less than tasteful things in regards to race. He has famously called black men super predators alongside Hillary Clinton at the time, which actually a lot of people give him flack for that, but he was his intent in being tough on crime back in the 90s. He actually wasn't wrong on that. The spot where he gets wrong at is in reversing that being tough on crime was a bad thing. Let's see here. During his campaign, he famously said that if you didn't know if you were going to vote for Joe Biden or Trump, then you weren't black. As per typical Democrat positioning, black is your skin color, your genetics, your DNA decides your politics and who you vote for at the ballot box, which we actually have a.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Well, there you have it from Joe Biden himself. Let's see here. Joe Biden has shown support for the KKK, which, as insane as that sounds, is true. He aggressively campaigned against busing to desegregate schools, as was brought up by his vice president during the election. He said that he did not want to create racial jungles by sending white kids into mixed-race schools. Oh, Joe Biden. He's also has some interesting things to say about black children and their mixture with white children, which we have another clip of.
We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Ooh. Okay, so poor is essentially synonymous with not white in Joe Biden's world. I would point him at literally all economic statistics that show that there are more poor white people than there are poor black people, just because there are more white people. But yeah, that was a rough one. One time he actually just straight up said the N-word. Was it by accident? Was him a slip of the tongue? I don't know. Who's to say? Joe Biden also said true and a Shabbat pressure once. I don't know what that means, but people clapped for it. Then he says the N-word, and I don't know if he meant to say it. Who knows? People also clapped for that. And then I would say the best one, the top line thing that Joe Biden has said against black people was referring to Barack Obama as one of the clean ones, which was, that was rough. Alrighty. Well, we got some more fun Joe Biden stories for you today. So, it might be a Joe Biden themed news review here. So, Joe Biden has decided to, after ignoring it for 10 months now, has decided to finally address Bidenflation, the essentially disintegration of the economy and skyrocketing of all prices. Joe Biden has been ignoring that basically all summer, and it looked like it was going to just continue to move on. But Joe Biden has finally decided to address the issue of the economic collapse. And guess whose fault it is? It's your fault. It's your fault for having too much money. So on Thursday, Joe Biden gave a speech touting his new infrastructure bill, and he attempted to explain why we have a 30-year record high inflation rate, which actually, so it's we do have a 30-year record inflation rate right now, but it just missed the 50-year high by like just a teeniest bit. It was just the teeniest bit that it missed the 50-year high for record inflation. And that inflation rate last month has come in at 6.2%. Jeez. According to Biden, the drastic rise of prices, including a 50% increase in gas, which, yeah, I've been feeling that, a 30+% increase in the price of meat, has resulted in a successful economic recovery. That's Joe Biden's stance there, because Joe Biden pumps gas a lot, and I'm sure he has to buy his own meat. He said that Americans now have more money in their pockets, so they're buying more, which is creating higher demand than supply is driving up prices. So that's it's not really Joe Biden's fault. It's actually your fault. So stop. You're making Joe Biden look bad. Let's see what Joe Biden has to say, because he had some interesting
Products like smartphones.
There we go. Yeah, he had some interesting hot takes on how the economy works. Let's watch Joe Biden. 3 minutes of Joe Biden explaining how he thinks inflation works. Take it away, Joe.
Products like smartphones often bring together parts from France, Italy, chips from the Netherlands, touchscreens from New York State, camera components from Japan, a supply chain that crosses dozens of countries. That's just the nature of a modern economy, the world economy. The global supply chains have helped dramatically bring down price we pay for things we buy. But they also made us much more reliant on what happens in other parts of the world. So if a factory in Malaysia shuts down due to a COVID outbreak, which they have, it causes a ripple effect that can slow down auto manufacturing in Detroit. Why? They can't get the computer chips they need. It's a climate disaster to close the port in China. It can delay shipment of furniture or clothing, reduce worldwide supply, and driving up prices here in America. And the irony is people have more money now because of the first major piece of legislation I passed. You all got checks for $1,400. You got checks for a whole range of things. If you're a mom and you have kids under the age of 7, you're getting $300 a month. And if it's over 7 to 17, you're getting $360 a month, like wealthy people used to do when they get back tax returns. It changed people's lives. But what happens if there's nothing to buy, you got more money, you compete for getting it there, it creates a real problem.
It's pretty incredible that Joe Biden is saying exactly what has been the conservative talking point about helicopter cash for 30 years. If you just give people money and pay them to not work, and then there's no stuff to buy. Well, yeah, they've all got more money, but there's nothing to buy. Joe Biden is describing, quite by accident here, I guess this is probably one of those accidentally a libertarian arguments here. Joe Biden is describing quite accurately exactly what happens when you do Democrat policies. The Democrat policies have exactly led to this, where everyone's flush with cash and there's nothing to buy. I have been considering buying a new Xbox, and I have the money available to buy, just for an example, and I literally can't, because there isn't one. There is none to buy. I have money. I would like to purchase something. I would be driving the economy, so to speak, and I can't buy it. It's just not there. I've noticed quite often I'm now making a lot of sandwiches with ham rather than turkey because, well, there's a turkey shortage and there's no turkey lunch meat at the store anymore. There's all kinds of stuff that I would just be willing to buy, but there isn't anything to buy. It's quite wild. And why is that? Well, got a lot to do with Democrat policies, a lot to do with the way the supply chain has been globalized. Funny, Joe Biden talking at the beginning of this about how, well, you have a globalized supply chain, so small disruptions all around the world just basically bring the world economy to a grinding halt, which is true, and globalism and the globalized supply chain was always sold as, oh, well, you have all these different places you can get stuff from, so if there's a tornado in Texas or a flood in China, well, it doesn't matter because you can just reroute the supply chain around the globe. That was the promise of globalism, but the reality is we have a bunch of countries overly specializing in things like chips. And if that one location has some kind of disruption, all of a sudden, all of the products that use chips, they can't do it anymore. Or it's a similar thing for other kinds of products, especially everything that we've outsourced to China, where you've got this over-reliance on specialization in transportation, and then now the ports are all closed, and now you can't get anything in. Globalism has always been a false promise, and now we're finding out why. But again, who was pushing globalism? Well, it was the Democrats. It was this theory that if you industrialize China and essentially sent all U.S. manufacturing to China, that they would become westernized and they would just magically become democratic and the Communist Party would fall. And first off, I don't think that was ever true. I don't know that anybody actually believed that. And it seems like that was just a ploy to give as much manufacturing ability as we possibly could to the Chinese Communist Party. And people like Joe and the Clintons and all the other Democrats just got wildly rich over the last 30 years doing that. It was a real great deal for them. And then here we are. They got all their money, and now you've got a bunch of money that they just gave you, but there's nothing to buy. How much money would it take to buy something that doesn't exist? It's a good question, and the answer is no amount of money. You look at places like Weimar Germany, where people were wheelbarrows full of cash taking it to the store, and there's no bread to buy. They were flush with cash. There's nothing to buy. You got Venezuela right now where they just lopped off 6 zeros on all of their bills because everything costs millions and millions and millions of bolivar. And you pay $1 million bolivar for something, and the same thing in buying in US dollars is like 12 cents. And so they're flush with cash. They have so much cash that everybody in Venezuela is multimillionaires, some of them billion and trillionaires, but they don't have anything to buy. There's nothing to buy. Joe Biden, you should be very, very gracious that he's sending you $300, $600, $900 a month if you've got kids, but Are you that grateful that you can't buy anything? Well, just be thankful that you've got these green dollars that he sent you. Go eat that. Go eat them out of your checking account. See how that works. All right. Let's let Joe Biden continue explaining how he's wrecked the economy and why it's your fault.
So it creates a real problem. So on the one hand, we're facing new disruptions to our supplies. At the same time, we're also experiencing higher demand for goods because wages are up, as well as people have money in the bank. And because of the strength of our economic recovery, American families have been able to buy more products. But guess what? They're not going out to dinner and lunch and going to local bars because of COVID. So what are they doing? They're staying home, they're ordering online, and they're buying product. Well, with more people with money buying product and less product to buy, what happens? The supply chain's the reason, and the answer is you guys. I'll get to that in a minute, but what happens? Prices go up. So we got nearly 20% more goods coming into the country than we did before the pandemic struck. In 19 days, COVID-19 has changed the way we spend our time and our money. More products are being delivered than ever before. That's because people have a little more breathing room than they did last year, and that's a good thing. But it also means we got higher demand for goods at the same time.
So we've done this calculation before, but if Joe Biden is giving you, I think we did the calculation with the Life of Linda thing the White House put out. So you guys, I think it was 2 weeks ago we covered this. Along with the infrastructure bill, the White House put out this little cartoon of Linda and used Linda as kind of a foil to explain what the infrastructure bill is going to do for you. And basically, Linda made $40,000 a year, and then she was getting an extra $3,600 in stimulus checks because of her child every year. And so I showed you that amounted to, I believe it was a 9% raise. And then we've got, which we just saw now, the inflation numbers came in at 6.2% inflation last month. I believe when we looked at Life of Linda 2 weeks ago, inflation was 5.2%. Wow. Basically, we went through the math that, so Linda got a yearly, essentially the equivalent of a 9% raise from the Biden administration because she got an extra $3,600 per year. And inflation went up 5.2%. So after the first year, she's doing pretty good. She's still ahead. She's still ahead of inflation. But that next year, she still only has the extra 9%. However, the compounded inflation of 5.2% and then another 5.2% got you up to like 11% inflation. Now, all of a sudden, Biden's 9% raise that he gave her through stimulus checks isn't covering the inflation of her groceries and other things that she's buying. And that's the problem. So Joe Biden hears, well, everybody's got a little extra breathing room. And then he goes into, well, I guess prices are going up. But it's your fault because you're trying to buy stuff like, milk and eggs and lunch meat and, things that are required for you to live and maybe medicine. Like, how dare you greedy Americans just sitting there buying basic staple food items. What's wrong? You're going to put gas in your car to drive to work so you can support your family? My God, you're basically an economic terrorist, really is what you are. I mean, a lot of people think it's the big financiers, the hedge fund managers, the people betting, trying to short GameStop and crashing the market. Like that people think they're the ones ruining the economy. But really, you're wrong. Really, it's you buying peanut butter and a loaf of bread and a carton of eggs and a gallon of milk. It's you. You're the one. It's your fault the economy's breaking. You're the reason why there's inflation. Joe Biden is just trying to help you out by giving you some cash. And you stupid idiots, you went and spent that cash inflating the economy. If you had just saved that money or lit it on fire or paid it back to the government in taxes, well, we wouldn't. Hello? Am I back? I smacked my mic and the cord fell out, and I believe I almost crashed out Streamlabs when that happened. I was in a good rant there too. But I think you guys see where I was going with that. So again, it's not the hedge fund managers. It is actually your fault because you bought peanut butter. Not even the good peanut butter. You bought like discount peanut butter at the dollar store. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not like Jif or something like that. And really, if you guys would just stop buying basic food, maybe go on like a 3-week fast and not spend any money on basic staples, the economy would be doing much, much better. Really, yeah, you gotta stop being so selfish, people. Come on now.
Time we're facing, people have a little more breathing room than they did last year, and that's a good thing. But it also means we got higher demand for goods at the same time we're facing disruptions in the supplies to make those goods. This is a recipe for delays and for higher prices, and people are feeling it. They're feeling it. Do you ever think you'd be paying this much for a gallon of gas? In some parts of California, they're paying $4.50 a gallon.
Yeah, you ever think that you'd be paying this much for gas? All right, so a few fact checks here. So according to a study from 210analytics.com, let's see here, which is slanted in favor of Biden. The U.S. meat industry has, in fact, earned 5% less in gross meat sales for the first half of 2021 compared to 2020. Keeping in mind that meat prices have gone up by an average of 30% nationwide, that they've only gained, what is this? Hold on a second here. So keeping in mind that meat prices have gone up by 30% on average, if they gain 5% less in income, then that means that they have sold a great deal less on product. I don't exactly know what I was trying to write here, but basically the meat sales, like volume of meat has gone, or prices have gone up, but the volume of meat being sold has gone down. So this whole idea that Joe Biden's saying about like, well, people are buying more products than ever, it's not lining up with the meat. Again, meat being one of the specific items that's way outpacing inflation by 30%. But at the same time, they're selling 5% less of meat by pounds, but somehow the price has gone up by 30%. It doesn't quite line up with what Joe's saying there. Joe's second point was that us Americans just simply don't understand the complexity of the global supply chain. You're just not smart enough. Come on, guys. You're not smart like Joe Biden. He's been in government for 50 years. Joe Biden's been in government for about twice as long as most of you have been alive. Joe Biden described how products made in America are often dependent on components made in several other countries. And again, as I said earlier, whose idea was it to make America dependent on foreign manufacturing? Surely it wasn't, I don't know, make America great again, Trump. It sounds like people like Biden or Joe Biden, who have given as much manufacturing as they possibly can through every possible avenue to China and created every economic incentive for every manufacturing company in America to outsource to China or other countries. But after we've seen what's gone on this year, was it really worth giving that up? Is it really worth it to all these companies to be saving 1% or for you to have slightly cheaper stuff at Walmart, which isn't even cheap anymore? For the basically you're rolling the dice. You get 9 years of cheap crap at Walmart and possibly 2, 3, 4, 5 years of extremely expensive or just nothing at all to buy at Walmart. Whereas if we just keep that domestic manufacturing, you could have moderate prices for all 15 years. So I guess that's the dice that we want to roll. Maybe we need to have a discussion about that as a society. Is it worth it that we can have all of this cheap crap that we can buy, again, it's not even cheap anymore, and just have a dice roll that some kind of global event will just cause everything to be just not even short, but just non-existent, not able to purchase it. I think it would make much more sense for us to have a more stable economy without all of that cheap crap, without all of that consumerism, and have prices be moderate at all times. But if there's something like COVID pops up, if there's some kind of unrest in China, whatever, then it doesn't disrupt your ability to get basic goods. The point of the economy is that it should serve you. It should serve you things that you need, sometimes things that you want. And the economy that we've built now really just serves foreign economic interests, domestic political interests. And at the drop of a hat, all of a sudden you're unable to get eggs. You're unable to get milk. You're unable to get... I was horrified about this. Apparently, the leading manufacturer of cranberry jelly, which is a Thanksgiving staple at my house, apparently you better get your cranberry jelly soon, otherwise you're not going to be able to get it at all. They're concerned about cranberry shortages. That's horrifying, absolutely horrifying. I would much rather pay $1.50 for cranberry sauce every year rather than pay 20 cents for it, and then all of a sudden it's just not here anymore. I could go on. All right, so basically the China virus pandemic has showed how globalization has given our enemies a weapon with which to harm America by restricting necessary resources and overall collapsing our economy. Joe Biden, during his speech, also acted as if the 50% increase in average gas prices was a shock to him as well. It's like, wow, did you ever believe that you'd be paying that much for gas? Well, Joe Biden, he doesn't get to say it like that. Like, you and I can say that to each other. Be like, wow, man, like, gas prices are crazy, right? Yeah, man. Well, we are passive observers of, or, passive endurers of what the economy is doing. Joe Biden is the one specifically making policy that has directly resulted in those gas prices with his oil pipeline policies and drilling policies. And now Joe's pretending like he's one of you guys, that he's just a passive observer instead of an active instigator of the gas price. Joe Biden doesn't get to say, wow, can you believe how much gas prices are? Joe Biden should be saying, like, I did that. Either he's proud that the gas prices are that high, or he's realizing that he made a mistake. Either way, he needs to own it, not just be a passive observer about it. And there's been a lot of people in the Biden administration, the energy secretary in particular, who have tried to, when questioned about gas prices, kind of made a laughing joke about it that, well, if only we could control the price of gas, right? Well, you and I can't, but people like the energy secretary and Joe Biden and people in the federal government that are blocking oil drilling on federal lands and stopping 2 pipelines now, well, they can have a direct result on the supply of gas and the price of gas. And they're just acting like, oh, we're passive observers. We're all in this together. There's not much we can do about it. And I don't know. I guess that's the... I thought that was supposed to be like the Democrat thing, was that they're the people that do stuff, that they're the planners and the schemers. Yet when it comes to gas and oil, all of a sudden, well, we're just a ship, adrift at sea on the tide of OPEC, and there's nothing we can really do about it. There's no possible way to plan for how to make gas prices cheaper. And so when you've got a group like the Democrats, who we know are prolific planners, prolific regulators, that there's no sector of the economy that they don't want to centrally plan. And then all of a sudden you get to gas prices. They're like, well, we just don't have any plans for how to fix that. It's just, we're all a victim of the same thing. Well, you can kind of guess that maybe high gas prices are part of the plan, because they like to plan everything else. They like to have their fingers in everything else. But all of a sudden, when it comes to gas prices being high and the people want them low, all of a sudden they don't have any plans. I think the more likely scenario is that their plan is for high gas prices, is to make gas so expensive that you're not able to drive to work. Then you need more government handouts, and also your minivan's not belching out all that CO2. So they're happy, you're unhappy, and I guess people will keep pulling the lever for the Democrats. I don't know. Part of me hopes that the people most affected by these problems are the people that voted for the Democrats. At this point, people who voted for policies which create suffering deserve to suffer under those policies. That is the only way that anything changes, is if there is a feedback loop of people voting for bad policies and then those bad policies affecting the people that voted for them. If there's not a feedback loop like that, then we're going to keep having this exact same experience every time we elect somebody for government, and it's not sustainable. Clearly, it's not sustainable. Alrighty, so just some other examples of why Biden is responsible for the 50% jump in gas prices. As I mentioned, the Keystone Pipeline, shutting down U.S. drilling permits, allowing our frenemies like Russia to create their pipelines into Europe when we could have had a natural gas supply deal with Europe and they could have been buying from us. Joe Biden has instead allowed them to buy from Russia. Then we've got the U.S. begging OPEC. Thank you for the lemon, Wolf336. We've got Biden administration begging OPEC to produce more oil, which they have refused several times, responding to Biden saying, pump it yourself. Let's see here. Then we've got just general supply chain issues. Well, Biden's vaccine mandate and Democrat big city lockdowns have caused a massive shortage of truckers, dock workers, production workers, transportation workers, all of which required to move oil and energy, but also just other staple basics in the economy that are now unavailable. I would say your one of your biggest reasons for food price jumps is that food is typically a lot of manual labor, a lot of not necessarily minimum wage, but not high wage either. Middle class manufacturing jobs for sure. And that has all been severely disrupted. The workforce available for food production has been severely disrupted by the unemployment benefits of paying people not to work, the additional money that has padded people and allowing them to not have to work as much, then just the lockdowns and the over-regulation, which has forced people who otherwise would want to work unable to work because now they're forced to have some kind of medical procedure that they don't want to have done to them. And then you're going to have the Biden tax plan on top of that, making it nearly impossible for employers to actually employ people, further collapsing all sectors of the economy. But food will certainly be continuing to suffer. I see no reversal trend on that. So look forward to continued inflation on meat. What's funny is that the inflation is really fast right now. However, it's just getting started, guys. It is just getting started. You'll see it too, because last month we were talking about 5.2% inflation. The month before, I think we were talking about 4.8% inflation. So we had 4.8, then 5.2, then this month 6.2% inflation. We are just getting started. We're not at the peak. We're not at the top. We're not at, oh wow, like Joe Biden, his first year was 30% inflation on bacon, and wow, it just stayed that price for his whole administration. No. 30% is just the start. Next year it's going to be 35% on top of that original 30%. This is the beginning of everything right now. This is the beginning of the inflation. We're not in the middle. We're not at the peak. We're not even getting started. We are just getting started. This is the new norm, is that every month the price of your groceries is going to continue going up, on average by 5% or 6.2% or whatever. And that rate is going to continue accelerating. By this time next year, your grocery cart is going to cost you probably 20% more than it cost you at this time this year. It's going to be wild. There is nothing putting the brakes on inflation right now. As bad as it is, there's nothing putting the brakes on it. And the current economic policy from the Biden administration and the attempts at trying to pass the Green New Deal or whatever the other Build Back Better Act thing is that they want to pass, that is all going to just keep accelerating the inflation. There's nothing stopping it. Only things accelerating it. So I guess strap in and hold on to your butts, because we are going to the moon with inflation. Alrighty. So Biden will throughout the next 3 years, as you are paying $700 for not even covering the bottom of your grocery cart, Biden will continue to repeat the lie that the $2 trillion infrastructure bill, which is going to actually end up costing more like $4 or $5 trillion, will end up costing you nothing. By this, he means that your tax dollars will end up paying for Democrat cities. So actually, I heard some interesting stats. So the main infrastructure bill that was just passed with the help of the Republicans, that had about, what was it? I think 500 billion for, it was 500 billion for roads and tunnels and infrastructure, like traffic infrastructure. Apparently, I don't have this fact checked, but from what I've seen is that 200 billion of that was earmarked just for New York City's their tunnels and subway system. So infrastructure nationwide is just New York City fixing their subway system. You get to pay for that. How great is that? Is that really going to help everybody in I don't know, Boise, Idaho, or Montana, or just anywhere in South Dakota? People forget about South Dakota, but it does exist. I really think that the rebuilding the tunnels in New York City are going to really help out those people all over Middle America. So Joe Biden's going to continue to say that's going to cost you nothing, though, which is, of course, a lie. It will require the printing of trillions more dollars, adding to the national debt, and continue increasing your tax revenue. Even if you're not paying taxes on your income, which they've vowed to stabilize, which I don't know, I guess we'll see how long that lasts. You're still going to be paying more taxes when you're buying stuff. One of the funny things about inflation is if it's inflating the price of a product, well, you're also inflating the tax that you're paying on that. If something cost you $1 last year and you're paying 7 cents of tax on it, and now it costs you $1.50, well, now all of a sudden you're paying, let's see if I can do it. You're paying about $10.50 or 10 and a half, we'll call it 11 cents in tax. You're actually generating more tax revenue due to the inflation, even though you're not getting anything additional. You're still getting, let's say you're getting a pound of turkey, and last year it cost you $1, and this year it cost you $2. Well, last year the government got 7 cents on that pound of turkey, and then this year they get 14 cents on that pound of turkey. Well, that's a pretty damn good deal for the government. For you, well, you still only got a pound of turkey. That still goes the exact same amount. Like your calorie requirement for your body, that didn't change with inflation. The nutritional content of that turkey did not change with inflation. Just the tax revenue that Joe Biden gets to collect off of it. All that changed was he gets more and you get the same. That's a pretty good deal for him. I don't know about you. All right. Let's see here. So Biden administration has vowed that they will be raising income taxes on people that make more than $200,000 a year. It used to be $400,000 a year. I think now they've lowered it. But again, you're still going to be paying, no matter how much you make, you're still going to be paying wildly increased sales tax on stuff just because of the inflation. Let's see here. Alrighty, so I guess you got all that inflation to look forward to. Buy some toilet paper, buy some cranberry sauce, and hopefully you found a turkey. Alrighty, so with all of that said, is it any wonder that Joe Biden's polls have dropped to a new all-time low? The new aggregate polls, which are more reliable than individual polls, the new aggregate polls, and again, a lot of the polls that make up that aggregate are left-wing polls that usually have a strong bias in favor of oversampling Democrats. And even with the oversampling of Democrats, Joe Biden's approval is still through the floor. So Joe Biden's approval has now dropped to an all-time low, a new all-time low of 38%. However, he is way up in the sky compared to the cackling Kamala, who has dropped to 28%, which is just wow. At this rate, it seems possible that one of this dysfunctional duo could unseat Congress with 21%. So as bad as they're doing, Congress's approval is still 21%. It's funny actually. The Kamala plus Joe Biden still doesn't even get them up to 100%. That's pretty wild. Let's see here. These numbers, these low numbers are really no surprise. The media was able to hide the fact that Joe Biden spoke like an incoherent imbecile while quote unquote speaking at recent climate summits and other speeches that he's given. But I don't think everybody's buying it. And then Joe Biden, seeing his low approval rating, decides to drop a couple N-bombs in context. I guess we'll see what his approval rating after that is. They also couldn't hide the fact that he was falling asleep at the climate summit. Several videos of that. But by far the worst part is that Joe Biden promised to continue to sabotage our energy industry in the hopes of, quote, fighting climate change. That's right. To fight climate change, Joe Biden requires only that you possibly freeze to death and maybe starve to death. Meanwhile, the largest and most irresponsible polluters like China will do nothing but sit back and watch us destroy ourselves and our economy. And again, not really us destroying ourselves, but our politicians destroying us, I guess. Alrighty. When an authoritarian regime sees low approval like this, they got to do something about it. And Joe Biden has, as the Democrats have enjoyed prior, they have decided that the FBI is the goon squad available to them. And so low approval rating, no problem. We'll just send the FBI after the haters. This is a story that we failed to cover last week, but something that we are bringing back up this week because there were some developments in it. And that is that Project Veritas, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, has had his home raided by the FBI last week, followed by some very interesting things that happened after that raid. Now, full disclosure, I actually worked for James O'Keefe at one point. I think some of you guys know that. When I was a wee lad in college, I actually was part of one of James's cells. So James, as you guys may know, James originally got his claim to fame by doing undercover videos exposing various political offices, but also various things that would happen on college campuses with professors and the diversity organizations and things of that nature. And so at many major universities, James O'Keefe had kind of cultivated cells of people cells of students that would go out and get hidden cam footage for him. And I actually was part of that. I got 2 hidden cam raids on people in our diversity office. One of them was me and a fellow James O'Keefe rebel. We talked to our diversity affairs officer and told them that we were upset about Lucky Charms cereal being available for consumption because my friend was Irish and that he felt that it affected his heritage. And we got some very funny groveling from the diversity affairs officer, trying to apologize, trying to say that he would do everything in his power to make sure that we weren't offended, and it was very, very, very funny. However, I no longer work for him, thankfully, because I'd probably be getting raided too at this point. But let's see from James O'Keefe himself what actually happened to him last weekend.
By making this statement, I am putting myself at great risk because on November 4th, Project Veritas came under attack. I awoke to the news that apartments and homes of Project Veritas journalists, or former journalists, had been raided by FBI agents. It appears the Southern District of New York now has journalists in their sights for the supposed crime of doing their jobs lawfully and honestly, or at least this journalist. I had to think long and hard before making this statement. It's a decision that only I can make. They don't want me to defend myself and immediately tried to silence me. That's why the cover letter to the grand jury subpoena we received contains this language. Quote, "The government hereby requests that you voluntarily refrain from disclosing the existence of the subpoena to any third party. While you are under no obligation to comply with our request, we are requesting you not to make any disclosure in order to preserve the confidentiality of the investigation and because the disclosure of the existence of this investigation might interfere with and impede the investigation." Unquote. But while the Department of Justice requested us to not disclose the existence of the subpoena, something very unusual happened. Within an hour of one of our reporters' homes being secretly raided by the FBI, the New York Times, who we are currently suing for defamation, contacted the Project Veritas reporter to ask for comment. We do not know how the New York Times was aware of the execution of a search warrant at our reporter's home or the subject matter of the search warrant, as a grand jury investigation is secret. The FBI took materials of current former Project Veritas journalists, despite the fact that our legal team previously contacted the Department of Justice and voluntarily conveyed unassailable facts that demonstrate Project Veritas's lack of involvement in criminal activity and or criminal intent. Like any reporter, we regularly deal with the receipt of source information and take steps to verify its authenticity, legality, and newsworthiness. Our efforts were the stuff of responsible, ethical journalism, and we are in no doubt that Project Veritas acted properly at each and every step. However, it appears journalism itself may now be on trial.
All right. So he continues to describe that basically last year, Project Veritas was given a portion of Joe Biden's daughter's stolen diary. So Joe Biden's daughter, her diary was quote unquote stolen, and the excerpts from that diary were given to Project Veritas last year. However, Veritas was unable to verify that these were authentic, and they did not publish these documents. However, they did report the possibility of stolen material to the police and to the FBI. The diary in question, again, at this point, they were unsure if it's authentic or not. The diary contained a reference to Joe Biden quote, taking a shower with his daughter at inappropriate ages, which made her feel weird. That sounds fun. The FBI raided the homes of several Veritas employees, as well as James O'Keefe himself, looking for the diary in question, even though Veritas said they'd only received excerpts and also had already informed police and FBI law enforcement that they had this idea that this journal might have been stolen. But because the FBI raided Project Veritas and raided James O'Keefe personally, this essentially confirms the authenticity of the diary excerpts that they received. And also confirming the odd facts about Joe Biden and taking showers with people who he shouldn't be taking showers with. The New York Times also knew about the raid 30 minutes after it happened and called James O'Keefe for comment. Again, James O'Keefe is currently suing the New York Times for defamation. And somehow the New York Times received information about the FBI raiding James's home 30 minutes after it happened. Either the New York Times has round-the-clock surveillance on James, or somebody from the FBI tipped them off. During the raid of James O'Keefe, privileged communications between James O'Keefe and his lawyers about the New York Times lawsuit and other things were taken and immediately leaked to the New York Times, who then published them quickly as if expecting that they were about to receive these private communications from James O'Keefe's cell phone. Veritas is currently suing the New York Times, and the FBI tried to pressure Veritas into not talking about the raid, even though somehow the New York Times was able to. What the leaking of James O'Keefe's cell phone records after the FBI raided his house, stole his cell phone, and then almost immediately the New York Times is somehow able to leak things that could have only come from that cell phone. That shows that basically the FBI is essentially just the Gestapo at this point. There is no difference between the FBI and the Gestapo. I believe it was this week. Steven Crowder has now caught up to Fox Trevize. I love Steven Crowder. Sometimes he's a little slow on the draw there. But he's finally caught up to me, where I had called for up to 2 years ago now, and many times since, that the FBI is irrecoverable. It should be just completely disbanded. A lot of people have suggested that perhaps it's just the people at the top. Maybe it's just the section chiefs for the FBI that are a problem, and it's the boots on the ground. They're really the good guys here. They're all good boys. They're all patriots. It's not really them that we're talking about, bad FBI people. We're just talking about the guys at the top. And my contention was, no, they're all bad. Even the boots on the ground, that they're bad. They're doing bad stuff too. And we've seen that more and more this year, where we've had the revelation that boots on the ground FBI members were attempting to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer and then frame random people as Trump supporters. And then you have boots on the ground FBI agents planning the January 6th riot and then attempting to frame Trump supporters. We've got countless other stories of the FBI attempting to frame people. Again, these are the boots on the ground guys. The people at the top don't have time to do all this stuff. It's the boots on the ground. And then now you've got boots on the ground FBI agents breaking into James O'Keefe, a journalist, breaking into his home and then stealing his cell phone. And then somehow a decision was made that the cell phone was then going to get leaked to the New York Times, a media agency that they know is specifically adversarial to Project Veritas. The FBI has no legitimacy anymore. And this week, Steven Crowder said that he is now calling for the full dissolution of the FBI. That Steven Crowder now says he does not believe even the boots on the ground. He's caught up to me finally. Not even the boots on the ground are salvageable. The whole FBI just has to go, even to the point of Crowder saying that he thinks that is a issue that Republicans or conservatives should be campaigning on, that he will be only voting for people who specifically call for the complete dissolution of the FBI. Glad that Steven Crowder caught up to me. Welcome to the fray, Crowder. But that's something I've been calling for a while, and it's now even more clear with this story that, again, you've got the FBI raiding a journalist's house because this journalist may or may not have damning information about the president of the United States. At no point was this speculated as being false information. If this was just false, made-up information about Joe Biden being naked with his daughter at an inappropriate age, then why would the FBI raid James O'Keefe's house? If James O'Keefe just had this, made up fan fiction, then why would the FBI raid his house unless they thought, oh, wow, this is real, we need to get it back? So this is just, again, the FBI acting as the Gestapo. And unfortunately, we're at a point in time now where it's not just that the institutions of America, all these what were thought to be these trustworthy, patriotic institutions like the FBI, like the military brass, like the police, certain members or certain areas of government. We thought that these were supposed to be kind of sacred institutions of Americanism. And we found out in the last year, the most painful thing that we found out in the past year is not that they've changed and become anti-patriotic, they've become anti-American, but that they just always were. They were just more better at hiding it before recently. So that's that. Like the FBI, you look back on the FBI, and when was the good FBI? When was the good FBI? Was the good FBI when they had several agents in contact with the Tsarnaev brothers for months beforehand? Was the good FBI when they had agents that were actually in hotel rooms with the 9/11 hijackers 2 months beforehand? Was the good FBI when they were harassing Martin Luther King and illegally wiretapping people in his organizations? Was the good FBI back when Hoover basically wanted to use them as his own personal Gestapo? I don't know. When was the good FBI? For people to say, oh, well, the FBI is salvageable because, you got these, patriotic people, boots on the ground type people, the common FBI agent is, they're a good guy. Are they? When was this fabled time of the good FBI? I wonder. But others have now caught up to me in my 2 years ago radical thing that I said, which I acknowledged 2 years ago that it was pretty radical for me to say that we need to just dissolve the FBI. That radical statement has now become mainstream, and I welcome all of my commentator peers to the position of dissolve the FBI. Alrighty. We also have just additional government overreach. The Congress has decided they would like to talk to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has decided that he would not like to talk to Congress. And a federal grand jury on Friday has now essentially, let's see here, after they've subpoenaed Bannon, which is, again, their request to talk to him, they have now attempted to charge him criminally for not wanting to talk to Congress. I was under the impression that we had a Fifth Amendment right in this country, that you had the right to remain silent. However, if Congress wants to talk to you and you don't want to talk to them, well, you're a criminal then. So specifically, a federal grand jury on Friday for refusing to testify to the January 6th Commission or submit any documents. Bannon has been indicted criminally. Ooh. Bannon and many others have been subpoenaed by Democrat Commission. That has been a naked witch hunt aiming at furthering the fictional narrative that the January 6th riot was a Trump-organized event, an attempted armed overthrow of the government. Bannon, 67, was charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress, which is meant to apply pressure on other individuals who have refused to cooperate with the commission. Now, I have not been charged with contempt of Congress, but I assure you, I have a lot of contempt for Congress, as do many people. And I think that having contempt for Congress should kind of be your default position. I would, if I was ever charged with contempt of Congress, I would say absolutely. I have a lot of contempt for Congress. I am guilty of having contempt for Congress and all of the congressmen in it. So I don't know. I would say that isn't it wild that that's illegal for you to have contempt for Congress? Why is that illegal? Why is that something that you can be charged for? I think that needs to be looked into, and that needs to be changed, because I think that if they want to use a different word and describe a different act, then perhaps they could charge it criminally. But I think just having contempt for your government is a perfectly legal thing to do in a quote unquote democracy or republic or whatever you want to call it. Certainly in America, I think having contempt for your government is perfectly legitimate. That is a perfectly legal thing to do. I have a lot of contempt for our government, so I don't know. I guess I'm guilty too. I guess indict me. Alrighty, let's see here. So our next story is a actually I guess I lied at the beginning of the show. We are doing a little bit of a Rittenhouse trial update. as I've said during our discussions of the Rittenhouse trial during the updates, I've been doing my best to just stay within the trial itself, even though there's so much going on outside the trial. I've felt the need to try to keep those shows limited to just what's going on in the trial and not discuss the things going on outside the trial. So during the Saturday night news recaps, which today is on Sunday, I can go into some of those kind of outside the trial things, which I'm going to do today. So interesting things have happened during the trial and during the utter collapse of the state's case against Kyle. And that interesting thing is that a large number of Democrats who had viciously condemned Kyle as a white supremacist who drove to another state to kill black people in Kenosha. A lot of those people who thought that are now getting to see the actual reality of what happened that night. And what it is that Kyle was trying to do that night when he was chased down by a pedophile. By watching the case directly and not having all of the quote unquote facts filtered through the mainstream media, they are now realizing that their concept of what happened that night was completely wrong. Democrats who are, Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks even admitted that she got it all wrong. Democrats who had joined in harassment and death threats and calls for harsh punishment for Kyle and his family and for his friends are admitting that they didn't even realize that Kyle had shot white men. They thought that he shot black people. And they also thought that he, I don't know what else they were thinking about him. Either way, they basically, all of the key facts of the case, they had completely wrong. And now that they're getting to see the reality in the trial, not something filtered through mainstream media, they're realizing that they're wrong. And now they are apologizing, which is nice, I guess. Thanks. I'm really happy that they've finally chosen this moment to do the one decent thing that they could possibly do and realize the obvious once it was forced down their throat watching it real on TV. Let's see here. Yeah. So basically just, why should we accept the apologies from these people who thought so wrongly they thought, oh, well, Kyle's just a white supremacist and he killed a bunch of black people and so he needs to, be death penalty or locked up forever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When none of that stuff was true. And now you've got all these people on Twitter apologizing and I guess, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to move on from this because it's really stupid. I don't really give a shit at all that people are sorry that they were wrong about Kyle. I really think that they just need to get off Twitter. And I don't think that we should, as much as I think we shouldn't listen to them the first time, I think that their apologies are just obviously irrelevant. And I really don't care about them and I don't want to continue covering this. So we're going to skip over this segment. Let's see here. So there was an interesting development in the trial towards the end of the week, which we talked about when we were covering the trial, which was that there was some images that the state claimed proved Kyle pointed his weapon at, I guess, Rosenbaum or Rosenbaum's friend prior to Rosenbaum chasing him. And the proof of this was a microscopic 20 pixel wide segment that they clipped out of a video and then zoomed in on a million times to try to say that Kyle was the smeary smudge pointing a gun at people. Somehow, actually, the most interesting thing is that they claim that Kyle was pointing his rifle at the Zachenskis. I can't remember. The name of the people that they thought that Kyle was pointing the rifle at. They were asked to identify those people in the video, and they actually were unable to identify where those people were in the video because it was so grainy and so blurry. They couldn't actually find the people that they were claiming Kyle pointed the rifle at. And so we're gonna watch a little breakdown of what it was the state was trying to show and the real analysis of this video, which is something that we had tried to do this past week on the Kyle Rittenhouse updates, but I didn't have the time and the tools to go through all of the analysis, but we do this time. So I want to show you this video of somebody who did a fantastic breakdown of why the state is wrong and why this picture that they spent a lot of time editing does not show anything that they purported to show. Let's watch.
All right, guys, last night I did a video showing you the drone footage, if you zoom in, what we're looking at and what the prosecution's trying to show with Kyle, right? I explained in the video above what the prosecution was getting at. This was their Hail Mary. They've been getting clobbered in this case, and they figured their last-ditch effort, no matter how bad they look to the jury, no matter how much they piss off the judge, they had to try to get Kyle to admit that he knowingly would be assaulting somebody by aiming the gun at them unless he was defending himself. He can't protect property by threatening to shoot somebody, right? So, right here, this is the footage that they're talking about. That's Kyle running right in the middle. You can see that white bar directly in the center of the screen. Kyle is running up and dropping that fire extinguisher. Let me show you. Again, right here, this would be Kyle. This is the fire extinguisher. He drops down. Keep an eye on that, and you'll see what I'm talking about. He runs up, drops the fire extinguisher, and they're going to claim that right here, boom, he just takes his rifle. See? Drops the fire extinguisher, rifle, boom. Aiming the rifle. Can you guys see it? Aiming that rifle. This would be, you'll see it when I zoom out. That's Kyle's head right here. This should be his elbow. And that would be the rifle right there, right? Let me slow it down and do it one more time. Drops the fire extinguisher. Aims the rifle. Boom. Aiming the rifle. That's what they're claiming. Now, it's obviously not clear enough. There aren't close to enough pixels here. We don't know who he was aiming it at. We don't know what else transpired. So I don't think it's going to be catastrophic to Kyle's case, but this is obviously what the DA is going for, and this gives you some insight into what you can expect next.
No, I thought that was a different one. Let me see if I can find the one I was actually looking for. Let's see here. Maybe it was this one. Let's watch this one instead.
This is the video in addition to what I had. So I wanted to do a quick analysis of the video in addition to what I had done earlier. I showed what the prosecution was going to be getting at. I saw it in advance, did a little analysis, and I was able to show you. Now we actually have the prosecution's exhibit in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. So this is the exhibit where they claim it shows he's aiming the rifle at the Kaminsky's. Right here, you can see him standing there. This is the edited version, the enhanced version. The one on the right is the original, clearly more pixelated. You can see some areas of distortion, big differences. If you look at the big white sign up at the top, it's a lot different when you see the version on the left, as are some other artifacts. So there are a lot of artifacts being introduced. But what you'll notice about this, and this is very important, a couple things. One, they're saying this is the head. This would be Kyle's elbow, bent. This black line right there is the rifle. This over here, right, would be the support hand. Again, you see this white, blurry blub right there. That would be his support hand. That's what they're claiming. So they're suggesting that that's him holding up the rifle. Number one, this would be him holding it lefty. If that's his arm and his elbow bent, he's holding it lefty. And in every single photo, Kyle Rittenhouse holds his rifle righty. He's never been seen in any of the hours and hours of video footage holding his rifle lefty. Now, this is a lightened version of the video, which I did an analysis on earlier, and there's something else that's very important that you're going to want to notice here. You see him run up, drop the fire extinguisher. Runs up, drops the fire extinguisher. I did this in my earlier video, so check that out if you want more detail. Then, when he lifts up his arm right here, this is where they say that's him aiming the rifle. However, do you remember right here how it showed his elbow bent and his support hand up front? Take a look at something. Why, as he's running up and drops the fire extinguisher, let me grab another screenshot and show you, why is his support hand already there holding up the rifle? That's part of the vehicle. That is not his support hand. That is not Kyle holding up the front of the rifle, as would appear in this, as would appear in this. This white dot is part of the vehicle and is not Kyle's support hand, and it is not him holding up the rifle.
All right. So that was a pretty excellent breakdown from, let's see here, Def Not Darth, who has been doing a lot of analysis of the videos that the state has been doctoring and placing into evidence. There have actually been accusations at this point now that the state is using deep fakes to show Kyle doing things on video that he wasn't doing. And I actually, I concur with that analysis. I believe that the image that they have over zoom and enhanced several dozen times. They said that the state said that they spent over 20 hours editing a single frame, this tiny little section of a single frame of 720p video. That what were they doing for 20 hours to edit this one little teeny tiny scrap of a single frame of video? And I think what they were doing was very slowly, pixel by pixel, adjusting Kyle's body position, and then color correcting that blob, which is just a reflection off of the vehicle, so that it matched Kyle's skin tone better, and then showed that to the jury without the full video available, not showing that Kyle's hand was somehow there prior to him arriving and that his hand stayed there after he left, that they are basically just building up deep fakes and then submitting those as evidence. And I guess we'll see whether or not the jury falls for it. As of right now, neither the defense nor the state have rested, so the state is still attempting to call people on Monday for testimony. Kyle's defense has the opportunity to call people on Monday for testimony still. The goal is that they will both rest their case on Monday morning and that they will then do their closing arguments. However, they don't necessarily have to do that. Hopefully, over the course of the weekend, Kyle's lawyers have seen some of the Twitter analysis of these videos and realized, oh, wow, they made a huge mistake in just allowing the state to put this stuff into evidence. And so hopefully they've got some ability to respond to that on Monday and get some of that evidence at least debunked for the jury's benefit or removed from evidence completely. Because at this point, if you take a 720p clip of video, freeze frame it, then zoom in to a 20 by 20 pixel area on that, and then spend 20 hours editing that little microscopic piece of video, I think that you're probably doing a deep fake. That's my opinion on it. Alrighty, so our next story, I think this may be our last story. It is our last story. Alrighty. So a high school school board has created an enemy list of parents who are opposed to CRT and presumably to pederasty being taught to their children. The Loudoun County School Board, of some infamy, has been caught creating an enemies list of parents who dared to complain about critical race theory and the sexual abuse of their children in schools. This is the same school that allowed 2 young girls to be raped in a bathroom by a boy claiming to be a girl, and who arrested and pressed charges on the father of one of those girls who complained about it. This is the same school board that allowed graphic and explicit sexual content and horribly racist materials to be taught in Virginia schools. This school board's members created a Facebook group with 600 members that included teachers from various schools and some parents and at least one legal prosecutor. The purpose of the Facebook group was to gather and publish the private information of any parents that attend school board meetings and complain about CRT and the sexual abuse of their children. They also, this group of school board members and teachers also hired private investigators who was caught writing down the license plates of parents who attended school board meetings. This was started around the same time that the Biden administration was working with the Loudoun County. This was started around the same time the Biden administration was working with the school board union to help them draft a request for FBI involvement into investigating anti-CRT parents as domestic terrorists. The Biden administration used 2 members of the union to create the request without permission of the union's leadership as a justification to investigate the parents. It was the Biden administration that wanted to use the FBI, but laundered the idea through the school board union to get them to draft a letter and send that to the FBI. The union later retracted the alarming request, but the FBI still announced that they intended to devote resources to investigating parents as possible domestic terrorists regardless. After the Loudoun County School Board created their enemies list, it was they were relieved when the Virginia police announced that they were investigating this their enemies list was revealed when the Virginia police announced that they are investigating the Facebook group as possible criminal activity. One example of how the group was actively recruiting hackers to take down anti-CRT websites or have them redirect users to pro-CRT content. The enemies list also went beyond those who attended school board meetings. One parent had their name on the list because they dared to question the banning of Dr. Seuss books on social media. So this is the start of what happens in every communist regime, which is the struggle sessions and people tattling on their neighbors and forming their own local goon squads to enforce the party line. This happens every time. This is not unique. It's just interesting to see the American version of it. However, it is a tale as old as communism that this sort of stuff happens whenever authoritarian regimes want to take over and enlist the help of the locals to enforce their edicts. Authoritarian regimes like China and all the various Marxist organizations or Marxist overthrows of various governments throughout the last century, they didn't stay in power because of the leaders at the top. They stayed in power because they were able to convince people at the local town and city level to enforce the edicts on each other. And the Loudoun County School Board is just one such example of doing that. They are the miasma of authoritarianism that pervades our culture and ensures that people like the Democrats are able to stay in power. If you have a child in school, you need to be going to their school board meetings. If you don't have kids in school, I probably wouldn't recommend going to a school board meeting, but that doesn't stop you from going to a city council meeting and speaking your voice there. Highly recommend that. As always, all politics is local. At least enforcement is local, and maybe that's a better way to say it. Not that all politics is local, but all enforcement is local. So take that one to the bank. Alrighty, that is our show for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. I will be back tomorrow with another Kyle Rittenhouse update on the trial. Those hopefully we'll see some stuff tomorrow. Hopefully there will be the last little bit of testimony. Hopefully Kyle's defense is able to debunk that photo a little bit better. And hopefully we get on to closing arguments. Let's see here. And then it is highly suspected that tomorrow the jury will go into deliberation. That is the current projection, but that remains to be seen. So I guess we'll come back tomorrow. We'll find out if they do get through closing arguments tomorrow. What I'm probably going to do is stream late so that I can listen to the entirety of closing arguments, and then I will do a stream after they're done with closing arguments. So we'll see what happens with that, but look forward to that tomorrow, and then look forward to next week, probably next Saturday, another weekly news recap, which will be lots of fun. All right, thank you guys. Have a good weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. This has been Trevize signing off.